Hello, Health Communication Campaigns class. What I thought I would do for you right now is put together a short video on the Health Communication Campaign Project. And what I'm going to do is just go over the assignment with you a bit and add some examples that hopefully will help you as you put your paper together. So the directions say that you need to choose a topic that you think a communication campaign can help solve. So how can communication help a particular area of health? And then you're going to talk about a plan, not an actual campaign, but develop a plan to alleviate that problem. The goal really in any health communication campaign is to promote wellness and reduce disease and not being well. So going toward the directions, it should wind up being an 11 to 16 page paper based on readings and based on your own thinking. So the first question asks you about your topic. So what is your topic? It could be the opioid crisis. It could be depression and anxiety. It could be eating disorders. It could be mental disorders. Whatever health communication topic you choose, you have to research that topic and you have to use credible sources. So obviously if you went to the National Institute of Health in their webpage, or maybe web pages or sources that have been done by researchers, those are going to be appropriate. So you can go to Communication Mass Media Incomplete on the library's database, or you could Google something, but then when you Google something, use common sense and use what you know and what you've learned as a college student to evaluate whether or not that source is credible. And once you find those sources, you'll have to explain the topic. So if you choose autism, for example, you're going to have to tell them what autism is and funnel down to a part of that topic that a health communication campaign could make a difference. So I have a child with autism who's 17 years old now, and one of the things that I'm finding is there's not a lot of services out there for adults, but there are a lot of programs aimed at earlier children. And so a campaign could be formed in order to hook people up with services, hook people up who are adults with autism up with services, or those family members to get those people the help that they need. So you have to research your topic using credible online sources such as the Center for Disease Control and refereed journal articles. The second part of that is what theoretical bases inform your research project. We know that campaigns have a higher success rate if you are operating from existing theory. If you recall, earlier in the semester, you had a quiz on the different health theories. For example, the trans-theoretical model or the health belief model. There was the communication commitment model developed by Dr. Hill and I. So what can the theory tell you about how to persuade your people? So for example, with the health belief model, there are a few key points, one of which people must believe that they will be adversely affected if they don't change, and that the adverse effects will be considerable. They have to believe that behavior change will be effective in preventing undesired outcomes. So again, highlighting the risks and highlighting the risks of not changing. So it's basically a cost benefits analysis of behavior change at that point. And though it's not a personal belief, the health belief model also talks about that people tend to be moved to action through eye-catching occurrences such as warning messages, brushes with danger, and attractive incentives. On the other hand, social cognitive theory talks about modeling, that people learn their behaviors through their observations and through their own past behaviors. So if you go through those different theoretical bases, you can choose things that will make sense to you as you put together the whole campaign. So for example, in the communication commitment model, one of the things that Dr. Hill and I posited is that people have to believe it's personally relevant for them. So you can't reach everybody out there, a public audience, on how to get help for adults with autism, but you can reach out to the families of people who have adults with autism, for example. So the next is, what are the goals of your campaign? Awareness should never be your goal. And if you want to hear more about that, you can reread the chapters in the Hill and Hayes book. So you should be familiar with that. And really, even in the Snyder article, they talked about the knowledge gap. People can have awareness about something, but that doesn't mean that they'll do anything about it. And sometimes awareness can lead to more harm than good, because even though that there's a lot of awareness out there on many issues, people still have a lot of misconceptions. For example, they may think that if they have a certain cancer gene, that they'll automatically get cancer, and we know that's not true, that the role of environment is quite important. And the next part is the objectives then to meet your goal. So your goal is pretty much always going to be to promote wellness for a particular target audience, to decrease behaviors or increase healthy behaviors, pretty much one or the other. But then you're going to have objectives to meet your goal. And so those are very specific, and they tend to be very time bound, and they're based on your target audience. So when we talk about your target audience, you could be talking about demographics, you could be talking about culture, personality. How do you define your target audience, though? You have to do that through research. So research occurs in 3 stages of a campaign. At the beginning stages, when you're putting together your messages and you're needing to identify your target audience, you can do that through focus groups, through secondary research, which would be looking at databases, looking at statistics online. The Pew Research Center often has statistics, as does the CDC or the National Institutes of Health. And again, talking to people, but it can't be anecdotal. So you have to talk to people in a very specific, systematic way to get at what you want. So why is a group of people in trouble? What are the specific problems that a specific group of people have? And then you have to look at social media communication outlets and strategies to reach your target audience. So we've pretty much focused in on social media, but social media isn't everything. So if you're a PR student or an advertising student, you probably know that from a PR perspective, we have paid media. That would be, running ads. We have earned media, which would be things like holding events to get people to attend to our message and to support a certain cause. And we also have shared media. And so this course is really focusing on shared media. But certainly, in terms of communication activities, that's just one part of it. There's also owned media. And owned media would be like your particular website, but the shared media part of it would be, what are people doing with your website? Are they sharing your Twitter posts, for example? So you have traditional mass media like radio. We talked about PSAs, and those are commercials usually done by the Ad Council. You also have brochures and flyers, and all of those things work. I was just trying to get you to be able to use social media in a very directed way. And then you have to consider what your specific and engaging campaign messages are and how those can be delivered on social media. So we have a social media toolkit that you can look at, and you should look at. And then you can get information on Facebook. For example, how many users are there? There's not a lot of young people on Facebook. So that may be an issue if you're trying to target a younger audience. So consider those kinds of things. So for a younger audience, you might want to do Instagram, but for every choice you make, you have to have a reason why and a demonstrated reason why. So let me just give you a little example of something that I'm toying with, and I've not done the homework that you're doing, and I'm not actually doing this assignment, but just to get you thinking about some things. One of the things that I've noticed about students lately is they seem to have a higher level of anxiety than what I've seen in the past. So I'm noticing anxiety among students. So last night I went through some sources and did a little bit of research. I went to things like theconversation.com after I did a Google search for things like college students' anxiety risk factors, college students' anxiety statistics, just to find out more about the problem and establish the problem and what needs to be done. So theconversation.com, though, was there was an article written by David Rosenberg, who's a professor of psychiatry and neuroscience from Wayne State University. So to me, that means that that site is trustworthy. So I'm going to go ahead and use that in a report if I were doing a report. David Rosenberg said that 1/5 of students do have anxiety. So there does appear to be a problem there. He also talked about some reasons behind the anxiety, such as excessive use of technology, mobile phone addiction, the use of stimulants for ADHD and ADD, that they could be abused, thereby causing more society. He talked about cyberbullying in high schools is on the rise. So by the time students get here, they're already in a state of kind of fight or flight anxiety, homesickness, financial stresses. And as I read this stuff, it seemed to me that one very specific target audience might be college freshmen, because they're bringing in a lot of this stuff with them. So that could be one very specific group that I might want to target. And so again, we don't want to just generate awareness. We want people to actually do things. We want people to make their anxiety better. One of the ways that they can do that is through going to the counseling center. So you could run a campaign. You could even advertise it in the Herald, although that's traditional media. You could put things on Instagram and work with the university to get our university channels getting these messages out of there, to go to the counseling center, for example. And then if the counseling center is willing to work with us, they could help track calls. So as a result of our campaign, does there appear to be a spike in the calls? We can ask people to, we can offer incentives. So if you mention this ad when you're calling, then maybe you can register to win a gift or something like that. It can be very difficult to keep track of things. And then once we have that information, we can work on ways to determining the success of our campaign. So again, going back to research, we could ask people to participate in a study with us here at A-State. We could ask freshmen, but we can ask other groups, what's causing your anxiety? And it may be stuff that we already know, but it may be stuff very specific to A-State, steps that A-State could take to alleviate anxiety. So there's lots of things you can do. If you were talking about traditional flyers or maybe even Facebook posts, one of the things you could do would just be to ask, if you're a college freshman, are you having things like trouble sleeping? Because WebMD identified that as a problem with anxiety. Are you having eating disorders, eating too much, eating too little? Do you have difficulty concentrating? Do you have headaches? Do you have stomach upsets? Do you have panic attacks? In other words, the pounding heart, the lightheadedness. Some of the other things that I found from the Anxiety and Depression Association of America are just a list of things you can do about anxiety. So taking time out, having a well-balanced diet, limiting alcohol and caffeine, getting enough sleep, exercising daily. I won't go on. But so you can use those as messages to target to people, tell them things to do, give them the counseling center's number and contact information, work with the counseling center, work with the university to actually target those people, things that they can do, warning signs, get those out there so they can understand. But again, you want them to do things in order to alleviate their anxiety. So part of it would be, after the campaign is over, you can ask people, did you see these messages? Did you see these campaign communication messages? Did you see handouts? Did you see social media posts? Have you acted on those things? And then call the counseling center and see if they've had a greater intake of people. You can also, if you do have social media messages on Twitter, look at the level of engagement. How many retweets? How many people are sharing the information? So again, I wanted to keep this video short just to give you an idea. Hopefully this clears things up for you. If not, you can stop by my office. You can call me at 972-2816, 870 area code, and you can email me at mhayes@astate.edu. Thank you for listening to this, and good luck with your campaign project.